When you make the impossible NBA 25, count it.
Hello and welcome to a special live stream of Locked On Women's Basketball. I am your usual Tuesday, Thursday host, Erica Lindsay Ayala, and I am, of course, joined here by Hayley McGoldrick. How are we doing? Okay, I see we got the jerseys. We're pulling out the jerseys.
You inspired me. I saw yours and I was like, okay, I got to do it. The Rebel ones, they're the best ones. I'm sorry to the Heroine and the Explorer, but the Rebel ones are it.
Obviously, I'm right there with you. All right, so Hayley, we'll start with you. Who are you repping? Tell us a little bit about this jersey.
So obviously, I have Diana Taurasi, the greatest. I think what I love about DT the most is that she is so much fun off the court as well as a force on the court. Like, I know it's going to be the most iconic thing ever, the I'll see you in the lobby. I think about that all the time. Like, just who she is as a person. I love her. I had to, although now I'm like, maybe I should have got a Kia Nurse one, but you can't go wrong with Taurasi.
Oh, Kia Nurse. Oh, Canada. We're definitely going to get into that. Of course, I am here rocking the Connecticut Sun Rebel jersey. I picked this one because I'm all about hashtag for the culture. So the Mohawk tribe actually owns Mohegan Sun, which owns the Connecticut Sun. And so they're one of the few tribes that owns a professional team, certainly the only one that owns a WNBA team. And I just love that they have their native language right here on the uniform, and all of the details were so intricately thought out between the tribe and the organization. So that's why I'm representing the Connecticut Sun today. And we went from DT to AT. Alyssa Thomas, unfortunately, with an injury, we won't see her. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Hayley, why don't you let folks know what you'll be doing this coming WNBA season and where they can find you, and then we'll get into the good stuff.
Yes, so I cover the whole league. I'm very blessed. I get to, go from everyone for Sportsnet. So you can find me at sportsnet.ca, covering pretty much everyone, usually doing a weekly roundup. A lot of Canadian content, obviously. So Sportsnet is a Canadian outlet. Last year, I got to talk to Bridget Carlton extensively and kind of her journey from the bench to the starting lineup of the Lynx. So that's where you'll be able to find me this season doing the same thing all over again.
Well, we are certainly looking forward to the coverage. We've already gotten 2 Canadians in there. We're going to keep it moving. But let's let everyone know what they can expect from the show. So Hayley and I will be on for the first hour, and we're going to take you through all 12 WNBA teams, team by team. And we're going to give you an overview, who you can expect on the roster, some roster changes within the hour, Hayley, right? Of us coming on. We got some major news. So forgive us if everything's not quite up to date on the graphics, because the news in the WNBA just keeps rolling in, but you got to stay tuned to find out all about that. I mean, we've got retirements, we've got coaches, we've got like one team cut. Basically, if you put position aside, they cut like a starting 5 today. So, I mean, it's just, I don't even know where to go with that, but we're going to have Brendan Clean on, Jackie Powell, Serena Mustafa. I mean, and of course, we are going to bring in someone from ESPN to talk about the reigning champions, the Seattle Storm. But before we do all of that, let's just get your take on 2020. Obviously, things in the world were not quite what everyone had on the books. But when we think about the WNBA, just open-ended question, what stands out to you the most about the 2020 Wubble season?
I mean, I think first and foremost, what stands out to me the most is their anti-racism and their social justice work. And that's what they dedicated their season to, and they dedicate their lives to. It doesn't just end when 2020 ended, of course. I think that's what stands out to me the most, the fact that it was always bigger than basketball for them. And the WNBA always is the league that's on the forefront of being the first ones to speak out, and they're never going to just shut up and dribble. They're always going to make sure they stand up for what's right. So I think first and foremost, that's what stands out. But second, I think just, the dedication these players put to the game, that was tough. The amount of injuries we saw, because they were playing pretty much every single day. And then as soon as Seattle wins the championship, okay, you're on a plane to go overseas. Like, it's crazy the dedication that these women put into the game. And obviously, yeah, some people got injured, some people had to leave the Wubble, but all in all, like, playing basketball almost every single day was crazy. So kudos to every single woman in the Wubble who pulled that off, because it was just incredible to watch. And they play some damn good basketball. So not only the game, but also the dedication to it was what I think stood out the most from that Wubble season.
I mean, there's so many things we could talk about. You're wearing a Phoenix jersey. So, I mean, the Shea Petty shot, what?
Exactly.
The Skylar Diggins-Smith shot? Are you kidding me? I mean, so many great things. I mean, Bree Jones for Connecticut had a standout season. Absolutely showed that she belongs in the league.
Even Connecticut going from losing their first 5 games, going 0-5 to slipping into the playoffs, taking the Aces to 5 games. Like, Connecticut was like, we belong here. I don't know who you think we are, but we belong here.
You'll love to see it. And from everything that we've seen so far, Hayley, 2021 is going to be that and then some. What about free agency? Like, what has you like, whoa?
I mean, it's been crazy. I mean, first and foremost, I think the biggest one in general was when Candice Parker went to Chicago. A lot of people expected it, but also I think LA was kind of like, okay, what do we do without her kind of thing? So that was a huge one. You see players like Seattle's already a good team, and now they've got Katie Lou Samuelson. Like, how is that allowed? But speaking of Alicia Washington, of course, she's hurt right now, but Alicia Clark also, like, that's going to be a force when she comes back. There's been so many moves. It's hard to even comprehend. I'm like, first of all, how is this legal? But
it's that new CBA, right? It's that new CBA money.
Exactly.
But you mentioned Seattle. So yes, they lose AC. They lose Clark. They lose Natasha Howard to the New York Liberty, which I am very curious to see how that's going to play out. They gain Katie Lou Samuelson, but we might have someone that knows a thing or two about the Emerald City ready to join us. Hey, there he is, decked out in green, Kevin Pelton from ESPN. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Not as nice looking as the New Jerseys, though. Those are sharp.
We had to represent. I love it. Who's that you got in your background there? That looks like a Storm jersey, or is it Sonics?
It is a Storm jersey. Actually, I don't know which direction I need to lean here. It's my own Storm jersey commemorating the time I worked for the organization. So
that's
there you go.
That's dope. Yeah, I was like, that's definitely that's the LJ era, right?
Yeah, that would be. So my last year was 2012, and that's when I got that, commemorated that. Now, unfortunately I worked 10 years for the team, so it means I stole Sue's number in the jersey.
Does Sue Bird know that?
I don't know if she does. One of those 2 jerseys is going to be retired. It's not going to be mine. That's for sure.
Well, Kevin, we are so happy to have you on. Hayley and I, we were just getting ramped up. As you can see, we're excited representing the New Jerseys, but we were talking a little bit about Seattle. Now, they come in as the reigning champs. Kevin, how do you like their chances to repeat?
You know, it's interesting. We've seen 4 championships now in the Sue Bird era for the Storm, tied for the most in WNBA history. But I guess, like Minnesota, who's also in that group, no repeats in that. They've all been separate, and the last 2 separated by 2019, when you had that very different team with Sue Bird and Breanna Stewart sidelined for the entire season. And again, it doesn't feel like a normal title defense because of the fact that, as you mentioned, 2 core pieces of the starting lineup. Also, Sammy Whitcomb is reserve, leaving during the offseason. In some ways, it's kind of a new team, even though you've got this incredible core in place with Sue Bird, Breanna Stewart, and Jewel Lloyd. So a lot of question marks, and I'm really curious to see how it all looks on the court on Saturday against the Las Vegas Aces.
That's going to be a pretty big test, which tells me, Hayley, that they really have to get some pretty good play out of their guards. I'm thinking Jordan Canada. I'm thinking Jewel Lloyd. How do you like those 2 coming into this season?
Yeah, I mean, I was big on Jewel Lloyd last year. I think she showed herself. I mean, Kevin knows more than I do, but I think that she's somebody who's definitely super underrated. When you think of the Storm, you hear, Sue Bird and Breanna Stewart, and you don't really hear Jewel Lloyd talked about enough. That's my opinion. Kevin can speak to it more, but I think she's going to be huge for the team this year.
What do you think? Gold Mamba, right?
Yeah, I tend to agree. She didn't get a lot of all WNBA consideration last year, and I thought she was deserving as far as the second team guard spot went there. The big difference between the 2018 and the 2020 Storm teams to me is how much more efficient Jewel Lloyd was as a scorer. And I think she also took a step forward in the defensive end. And that's going to be even more important this year for the Storm because you don't have Alicia Clark around anymore to handle those most difficult defensive assignments on the wing.
Yeah, for sure. Just a reminder, we are here with the Locked On Podcast Network. I am Erica Lindsay Ayala, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, joined here by Kevin Pelton of ESPN. And we have Hayley McGoldrick with Sportsnet joining us. Hayley will be here for the full hour. Kevin, we have you here to talk about the Seattle Storm in particular. Anyone who's listened to me talk about any sport knows that I love defense. And I think you bring up a really interesting point. I think across the league, we have a lot of key defenders in different spots, maybe with not just with different teams, but potentially having to play a different role on the team that they're on. So thinking about that defensive end, who do you see stepping up with the absence of Howard and Clark?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, you're talking about the 2019 Defensive Player of the Year in Howard. Alicia Clark was the runner-up last year, a unanimous pick to the All-WNBA, All-Defensive First Team, I should say. And, I think it's a little easier to see how they're going to replace Howard in the front court because that's clear. Candice Dupree, it looks like, is going to, and Dan Hughes said earlier, is going to start the season at center. But you've also got a lot of options there. Mercedes Russell is probably your best post defender when you come up against those bigger front courts, a Liz Cambage, a Sylvia Fowles, a Brittany Griner. And then I think this is going to be a breakthrough campaign for Ezzy Magmagor, who I don't think was expected to contribute a lot necessarily as a rookie and fought her way into the rotation because she was just so effective right away as a baby. I think 20 to start the season. So, she was really impressive, but the wing is much more of a question. You got Katie Lou Samuelson coming in as part of that deal that sent Natasha Howard to New York. You've got Kiki Harrigan possibly playing a little bit on the wing also from that deal. Kennedy Burke, who they acquired on draft night, and I think is probably the best defensive option. She's the closest match, I would say, to what Alicia Clark gave you on the wing, although certainly not a one-for-one thing there. And then also Stephanie Talbot, who made the roster, and Dan Hughes mentioned earlier when he was talking about that as much as he knew her game from when she was in the WNBA previously, still had been surprised by how effective she was during training camp.
Yeah, Talbot is one of those players that I don't think officially came over in the trade, but some of those swaps that we saw from coast to coast, New York Liberty to Seattle Storm. So I guess the big question, Kevin, and I'll also toss this over to you, Hayley, is, looking at not just this roster, but looking at all 12 teams, Kevin, do you think it's realistic? So we'll take repeat off the table, but where do you see Seattle finishing in the regular season? And do you think they can make their way back to a title game?
I think it's possible. I mean, I put them right now in that second tier. I'm much higher, as you could see in the WNBA predictions we posted today on ESPN.com on the Minnesota Lynx than just about anybody. I picked them to win the title, and so I have them in Las Vegas in a tier of their own. I think a lot of people would probably put Chicago in that tier, but I've got them in that second tier with Seattle in that group, with Washington in that group. And I think those are the teams that are probably going to be fighting for, home court advantage in those first two rounds of the playoffs with if Minnesota and Las Vegas are in fact able to separate and claim the two byes.
I can agree with that. I'm pretty high on the Minnesota Lynx too, honestly. I think, and no discredit to Seattle, they obviously had an amazing roster, but I think a lot of teams in the Wubble, because of the condensed season, did have to deal with some injuries, losing players. Obviously, the Storm themselves, they lost Whitcomb due to the birth of her child. Teams were losing players, but I think with healthy rosters, a healthy Minnesota roster with their picks, with Nafisa Collier, Crystal Dangerfield, Sylvia Fowles, their bench, Rachel Banham, Bridget Carlton, they're going to be scary. So I'm pretty high on them too, but I think obviously Seattle, they lost Alicia Clark and Natasha Howard and Sam Whitcomb, but they also picked up, like you said, Katie Lou. They picked up some defensive players. I think they have a good chance of getting back to that final. Whether or not they win it, I don't want to predict, but I definitely think they have a chance of making it back there.
All right, I like this. We're gonna get to Minnesota later, but I'm on board with all of this. But Kevin, before we let you go, and we're gonna move on to the Las Vegas Aces, which is, of course, is the team that the Seattle Storm faced and swept in the finals last year. But I had the great pleasure of talking to Sue Bird, and we know that, of course, there's a new team coming to Seattle, and there's a new arena. So it's not KeyBank, we got a whole, facelift and whatnot. Do you see Sue Bird playing in, it's Climate Change, right? It's Climate Change Arena. Do you see her continuing on and playing in that arena?
Yeah, Climate Pledge Arena.
Climate Pledge, there it is.
Amazon Climate Pledge, yes, to reduce their carbon emissions. And yeah, I think that's actually going to be a motivating factor for Sue. She's kind of mentioned that obliquely at times, is that that's a goal to get back there in front of, fans in the same place where she won those first 3 championships with the Storm. And, it's always year to year with Sue. That's her first answer whenever we ask her about this, is it's going to depend how I'm feeling. But look, she's still one of the very best point guards in the league. As long as her health holds up, I don't see any reason not for her to not come back for another season.
I love it. Also, Sue Bird made sure to mention the Supersonics in our interview. She said RIP. Also said they will be back. Do you agree or disagree? Supersonics coming back?
Eventually, yeah. Not as fast as the timetable for the Kraken to come play at Climate Pledge Arena, but before too long, hopefully.
All right, Climate Pledge Arena. If we've got the Storm there, got the Kraken, and if the Supersonics are on their way back, as they say, the house will be packed. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you hopping on our live stream, and of course, all of the work that you do to support women's basketball.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Take care. All right. So Climate Pledge Arena, we're going to have to nail that one down. But that brings us to something that we didn't talk about before we get to Las Vegas. We talked about 2020. We talked about the end double. But Kevin, and we have to obviously thank Kevin for coming on and joining us one more time. But he mentioned, of course, and we were talking about arenas. So Hayley, that's something that we will see in 2021. The WNBA will be playing in Market.
I know. I'm very sad that I'm stuck here in Canada and I keep getting emails for credentials and I'm like, let me in. I want to come. But absolutely, I think you talk to any athlete in any sport and that makes such a difference. Like, yes, you have your teammates and your coaches and that's your team, but you also do it for the fans. Yes, you do it to win, but there's people supporting you from all across the world, not just the country, the world. There's people who cheer for the Seattle Storm and the Phoenix Mercury all over the world. So I think being able to be back in front of fans is huge. It adds just another level to, okay, imagine that Shea Petty shot you were talking about in front of a packed arena in Phoenix. Like, that would be insanity.
Yeah, wild. So we had the Shea Petty shot. We also know, and I believe it was Arielle Chambers, who we expect to have on a little bit later, but did 25 moments of WNBA history culture. And so I'm not sure. I don't remember off the top of my head right now if the Shea Petty shot made the cut, but the Hamby heave definitely did. And that is the transition to talk about the Las Vegas Aces. They get to the final for a second consecutive year, but they get swept. We just talked about that. They get swept. They come across a Seattle Storm team. Now, I'm curious to know if you agree with this narrative that we were hearing coming in. A lot of people were saying, and I think Kevin alluded to it a little bit, that 2019 wasn't a proper opportunity for Seattle to repeat. I thought that was a little disrespectful to Washington and to Las Vegas. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Hayley.
I mean, as I was kind of saying to Kevin, I think it's really hard to base everything off of an injury, because talking about that, you look at Las Vegas, Kelsey Plum was out with her injury, Liz Cambage opted out. Even Hamby, she was injured, 6th woman of the year, a key bench player. She was injured in those finals. So if that's the route you want to go, okay, well, if you took the Las Vegas squad right now to that final in 2020, it's a whole different scenario. It's probably going to 5 games and it's probably going to be close. So I agree with you. That Washington team was incredible, and they're going to be good again this year. And obviously, we'll get to that. They have amazing players returning. So I think it's, you could say the same thing for Washington. Washington could have repeated if they had their players.
Exactly.
You have to work with what you have. It's the unfortunate reality of sports. You could what if all day long, right? And that's kind of my argument for this Las Vegas team. I think they're so high on the title odds because the players they were missing aren't just anybody. Like Liz Cambage she holds the record for most points scored in a WNBA game. Like Liz Cambage can ball out.
Yeah, absolutely. You have Liz Cambage. You have the reigning MVP, A'ja Wilson, returning. We will say, though, it's unfortunate, but it's part of our job. And I don't know how this will impact the BetOnline odds that we have up here. The title odds, the block is hot outside. I apologize for the noise. But Angel McCoughtry goes down with an injury in the preseason.
Terrible. And she was such a big part of that team last year. And I think she, not only her leadership and her being a veteran in the league, but also just her play, it's a huge loss for them. And, it was hard for them, I think, to kind of even find that chemistry, losing players, having people who were usually bench players be shifted into the starting lineup. And she took on that role, and her and A'ja were the two, Las Vegas, you knew that they were going to give them the ball. If the ball was in anyone's hands, it's going to be the two of them. That's a huge loss for Las Vegas, and I definitely think it will affect their title odds. Of course, the pickup of Chelsea Gray from Los Angeles was huge, but even still, you're right, it's definitely a huge loss. And now I'm kind of I still feel like they could make it to the finals, but can they complete the job, right?
Yeah, they're going to have to really scrap it out. We already know teams like New York, it looks like Chicago, Washington to an extent, they're already trying to think and play around when it comes to the emergency exemption, knowing that they're going to have players that are overseas or that have commitments to their national teams because, hey, surprise, 2021 is now an Olympic year. So there's a lot going on, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out throughout the league. But for Las Vegas to lose a piece like Angel McCoughtry is going to be really tough to overcome. But we've started to talk about this next team a little bit, and it sounds like already on our live stream, they're a little bit of a favorite, but we have a few guests that, I don't know, maybe they'll balance the pan out a little bit here, but we are going to talk next about Cheryl Reeve and the Minnesota Lynx. Now, first of all, we've been talking about jerseys, and we're joined now, of course, by the amazing Jackie Powell, classic J Pow in the house. What's good?
Oh my gosh, I'm all right. I'm a little tired, but I'm so happy to be here. And I was listening in to some of the other teams, and this is so cool. So thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for joining us. So first, Jackie, most pressing question. You can see Hayley here has her Rebel jersey. I am wearing the Keosauqua, Connecticut Sun Rebel jersey. Thoughts on the Minnesota Rebel jersey, which is an homage to the music scene in Minneapolis? I think you're going to like this question.
So I'm looking at my vinyl collection. It's over there, and I have Purple Rain, in my collection. I think paying homage to Prince was such a brilliant move because of his history of just being such a huge supporter of the Lynx and the WNBA. So I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I would love to be in that arena and sort of hear sort of how they may incorporate some Prince into the music that goes on during the games, but I love it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Aerial Powers was one of the models there. Oh, they brought out the motorcycle. It was fantastic. But again, for those just joining us, we are here, a live stream, a part of the Locked On Network. I am Erica Lindsay Ayala, your host of Locked On Women's Basketball. You were just hearing from Jackie Powell from the Next. We're going to get into Minnesota, but we are also joined by Hayley McGoldrick, who is going to split hosting duties with me for this first half. So let's get into the Minnesota. So we've talked about the fits, which is obviously the most important thing. But this is a Minnesota team. Their second round pick is Rookie of the Year, leading them to a series, leading them to a semifinal series, which not a lot of people thought they could do in 2020.
Oh, Crystal Dangerfield. What a fantastic story. You love that type of story. And it's so interesting because I know we're talking about the Lynx, but I'm just imagining if we had a tournament last year, would we have seen Crystal do something similar to what we saw from Ari McDonald? That was just a comparison that came to my mind. But
small but mighty.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
But yeah, Crystal Dangerfield, again, Rookie of the Year. She follows Napheesa Collier, her teammate, of course, both at UConn and now with Minnesota. But this is a team now. I mentioned Ariel Powers, but they also add Kayla McBride. And hey, Hayley, we got another Canadian, Natalie Achanwa, and of course, Bridget Carlton had a fantastic season as well. I would love for you two to talk about the Canadians.
Oh God, yeah. Jackie, you start.
Oh, okay. So I loved what Bridget Carlton did in the Wubble. It was just fantastic to see her have that type of breakout season. And she's such an interesting player because, you know, her size, I mean, I believe she's 6'1", but she almost looks, maybe it's because she's got super long arms, but she just seems bigger than just being like a 6'1" wing. You know, she's someone who can challenge people on the block, but then she can step out and just drill those threes. I mean, no one saw her coming, and she's just tough. She fights for the rebounds. I mean, she's a gritty player, and those are the types of players that Reeve really likes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people maybe kind of questioned when she got picked up from the Connecticut Sun. And, you know, same with people are like, oh, Cheryl Reeve was really high on Rachel Banham as well. But Cheryl Reeve knows what she's doing. She was Coach of the Year for a reason. And I think this Minnesota team has just gotten better in the offseason. And, like, their title odds are 1,600. That seems a little high for me because clearly they're one of the strongest teams, and I think they have a really good shot at winning the title this year.
All right. I like that. Now, let's spend a little bit of time, Hayley, talking about Natalie Achanwa. She's coming from a franchise in Indiana that is struggling, I think is fair to say. And I think that her game has gotten lost in the WNBA. I don't think a lot of people really truly understand the Natalie Achanwa that we saw at Notre Dame, or even the Natalie Achanwa that Canadians know from the national team. So what are some things that you are looking for now that Natalie has a new team and, as you said, Coach of the Year caliber Cheryl Reeve right there, not to mention the assistant coaches on the bench?
Yeah, no, she definitely is a playmaker, and that kind of got lost in Indiana. I feel like a lot of the time that Indiana team is more so trying to defend and make sure they're not losing by like 30 instead of actually finding their game, being able to take those shots. And that's something that she can do. And I think that's something that she'll be allowed to do more. And that's, like I said, that's why Cheryl Reeve is high on a lot of players, because she can see their shooting ability and she can see what they can do from any part of the floor. And that's something that Natalie is able to do. But that team last year, even still, they added some key pieces, but that Indiana team, I know we'll talk about it later, but still, I'm not sure the direction they're going in. But I think her now in Minnesota, she was sought after for a reason. And I think that they're going to be truly one of the most versatile two-way teams in the league, because a lot of their players are not only great scorers, but also defensively are on the ball, grabbing defensive boards, offensive boards. So I really think that her game is going to come back this year on that Minnesota team.
And so, Hayley, you've talked a little bit about Achanwa. Jackie, I'd like to get you involved here because Sylvia Fowles is expected back. Unfortunately, had a calf injury that really disrupted her ability to make an impact long-term in 2020. Where do you see Achanwa fitting into a team that is still very much a Sylvia Fowles team? Well,
I think that this is a fantastic setup for Natalie Achanwa because it allows her to, I think, as we've been saying, unleash her game, but do it in a really safe space. she's doing it in a space where she has one of the best post players of all time. So she's able to develop her defense, but also she's going to play a role in helping facilitate too. I don't think we can't not talk about Achanwa's passing ability, which is, I think, a reason why Reeve went after her. If they can do a little high-low, like, I think what's fascinating about the Lynx is they're going to be a team that can stretch it out. They can play 4 out. But then when they go up against the really big teams, like when they go up against the Aces, when they go up against the Mercury, they can be like, okay, well, we're just going to plop in Achanwa next to Fowles, and there you go. You've got these 2 bigs that are super smart. You know, you've got Achanwa who can find fouls on the block. Mm-hmm. You know, the only thing with Achanwa is I know she's got like she's got a jumper, but it's not a 3. She's got like a mid-range game, right? But it's sort of developing or whatnot. I just wonder.
I'd say it's as a Canadian hockey player, you knew I was going to get that in there. Jessica Platt once said, I think it's aggressively average.
Okay.
That's probably not giving Natalie enough credit. I really just wanted to get a Canadian hockey reference in there. But no, I think Natalie Achanwa is got a about solid mid-range, but you're absolutely right that I think that could stretch. I want to get your thoughts though on the bench bosses for the Minnesota Lynx, because that's going to help us as we get ready for our next guest, because there's a connection between Minnesota and the New York Liberty. Sometimes it's a little bit of a spicy connection.
Oh, it is beyond spicy. Oh my God.
Go for it, Jackie.
I mean, we're what? 2 year and a half removed, and it's still very spicy. I mean, I think part of the thing is that the teams haven't been in market. So I think when we get Katie Smith at Barclays and then Walt and Shelly P in Minnesota, it's going to be weird.
And we have another expert on the New York Liberty beat now that they're in Brooklyn, Serena Mustafa from Venus Sports. How you doing this evening?
Hi, I'm doing very well. Very excited for this upcoming season to start.
Well, we are excited to have you. I'm loving all of this, just amazing woman power that we have on the screen right now. We're going to hold it down for sure. But Serena, you heard us talking a little bit about the coaching, the limbs of the Cheryl Reeve coaching tree, and some of those branches have now fallen into Brooklyn. The 3 of us, Jackie, Serena, and I, we were able to hop on Liberty Media availability. I'm curious for you, Serena, what stood out from what Walt Hopkins was saying on the eve of his first time coaching in Barclays?
Yeah, so there's 2 big themes that's kind of been coming out of the media availabilities with Coach Hopkins. One is experience and another one is defense. So on the experience side, they've brought in a couple of vets now. Before the Liberty were one of the youngest teams in the league, but now they have, they're all sophomores now. They've brought in some of those vets like Natasha Howard, who's supposed to be joining them a little bit later. And I think you're going to kind of see that's going to help them. They only won 2 games last year. So I think you're going to see them winning more than that now. And, on the defensive side, they keep saying other teams are going to feel us. They're going to feel us there. And, Jackie knows that's all they've been talking about. But, you have Natasha Howard, former defensive player of the year. You have your rookie, Dee Richards, who's won multiple defensive awards before. She's known for that stuff. And I think that's going to be the focus from now on. And, they say that defense wins championships. And although the Liberty may not be a contender, it's definitely going to help them bring them into some sort of conversation, maybe one of the most improved teams this season.
I'm looking forward to it. I've already addressed defense a time or 2 with Hayley. It's kind of important. Defense, rebounding, boxing out. And I feel like when watching Liberty games over the past 5 years, I have been throwing question marks as to where the defense rebounding and boxing out was at times. I just feel like, Jackie, sometimes the teams, and Serena, you hit on this, that they were young teams, but they just seem to lack a little bit of focus. I get the sense that Walt Hopkins and his approach to coaching is really about making it that the team is truly the sum of its parts, and that everyone knows their role and feels that they fit into place. What are your thoughts on that? And then Hayley, I kind of, I got to stir the pot a little, especially with you in that Phoenix jersey, maybe talking about a certain Canadian that is not going to be able to be part of the sum for the New York Liberty. But Jackie, first, we'll start with, where do you see Walt taking this team, and how do you think that all of the pieces, some that Serena was talking especially about on defense, are going to come into play when he wants to put in and institute his systems?
Yeah, so I think we have to, when we're talking about defensive players, you also have to talk about Betnijah Laney, who the Liberty went after her. Apparently, when players were, I guess, being added in the wubble during that strange period of time where teams were losing players to opt-outs and teams and GMs were scrambling around, apparently the Liberty wanted Laney. But the Dream, they hopped on it and they got her first. Betnijah Laney actually knows Layshia Clarendon quite well. And I remember in some availability, Layshia sort of said, yeah, I called Betnijah and it was too late. The Dream had already, got to her first. So I think, and Betnijah Laney is someone who, she got to where she is by working just so hard. I mean, you look at her game over where it was when she was drafted, I believe, by the Chicago Sky, and you take it to, where she was in Indiana, and then you look at it again when she was in Atlanta last year. That's the type of development that Walt Hopkins sort of wants to facilitate for the young players that he has. He sees Betnijah Laney as this, an example, for his young players. I mean, you've got first round pick from this year, Michaela Onyenwere. You've got her saying, I think my ceiling is where Betnijah Laney is. So, I mean, I didn't mean to go into a whole rant about Betnijah Laney, but she's so important because she is an excellent defender and she can score from all three levels.
I think that the interest in Betnijah is very intriguing to me. I think it's also interesting. We had the graphic that showed that they also move away from Kia Nurse, which was, one of their top 10 draft picks that was on that team. Obviously has a great visibility for a lot of different reasons, the UConn connection, being on the Canadian national team. Hayley, what were your thoughts about that trade where New York traded Kia and Megan Walker, we should say, to Phoenix?
I mean, we all saw, obviously, Kia had a rough year last year. And it's hard to say somebody has a rough year when they're literally in their third year. You're still young in the league, and it's really hard. Obviously, we know how hard it is to make the league. It's kind of tough that when you're already in your second, third year, you're already a veteran and a leader. She still led the team in scoring. She still was a leader on the court. But she herself dealt with injury, obviously having to deal with Asia Durr opting out, Sabrina getting hurt. She really had to do, I think, a lot more than she was prepared to do. Obviously, she's a really incredible scorer. She's joining an incredible backcourt in Phoenix, and they're going to be scary to watch. But I think that they knew her value when they were trading her, but I don't think in an ideal situation they would have wanted to get rid of her because, again, like Jackie just said, Walt has, a tendency to want to develop players, and she still has a bit of developing to do. But I think she was really not prepared for what she had to take on last season. And I mean, who would be? Who's going to go in there and say, by the way, this veteran is opting out, and also the rookie who we got first overall, who is quite literally the best player in this class, is now hurt after 3 games. So go find out how to win games. Like it was super hard for them. And they, like I said, they were one of the youngest teams in the league. So that the inexperience, trying to find that chemistry in an unprecedented season when you're playing basically 24/7. It was a really hard year for her, and I'm hoping that she kind of gets a little bit of that confidence back in Phoenix, because you could tell she lost a lot of it. It's very hard to go out there and you're literally leading your team in scoring and you're still losing all the time. You're definitely going to put a lot of that on yourself, right? But I think she's going to have a bit of a comeback season. I would have loved to continue to see her in New York, but it's not always how it works out.
Yeah, indeed. And Krina, I'm sorry, I've been pronouncing your name wrong. You got to call Auntie out. I'm old, so you got to help me with these eyes. But I want to get your thoughts, because I see, I believe it's Damien. Is that my good friend Damien in the chat here? Is a little worried about the New York Liberty size. So, Karina, I don't think that Natasha Howard is ready to run with the team just yet because of overseas responsibilities. And now, of course, there are COVID protocols that we have to worry about integrating players. What are your thoughts? They lose Zowie B, which Zowie had size, although Jackie knows I always thought she could play on the post a little bit more. But how do you think the New York Liberty will match up, not just against Indiana, but other teams with true post players?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is obviously we are lacking a bit of size. And, something that coach was saying today in the call was that we don't only have to match up against them, they also have to match up against us. So at the same time, with all these, a bit undersized, but, if they've been practicing, if they've been doing defense in practice and, they've been running different kind of stuff in the post and things like that, I think it's going to be hard, definitely, but they can probably pull it out, and they're a tough team, and I think that they're so determined in what they have to do that any team going up against them, it's going to be still tough.
All right, we're going to get ready to transition up I-95 and then some, though. But anyway, we're going to talk about Connecticut in just a bit, but I want to get Jackie, hello, motorcycles, Jackie and Karina, I did it again, and Karina to talk about New York. We know that they won 2 games. What's the over-under on how many they win this year? But more, jokes aside, do they get a top 8 spot in 2021? Karina, let's start with you.
I think that's interesting. I am hopeful. I would like to say that, yes, they will. I think with Sabrina coming back, and they said she's been getting closer and closer to 100% every day. I think that she's so good at just running the floor and running different plays. She has her IQ is amazing. And, like Hayley said, she's the best player in that class. So I think the Liberty will really enjoy having her back. And I'd like to think, yes, they win more than 2 games and, yeah, maybe even be in that top 8.
So I think I see them easily being at that 9 spot, getting really close, but not getting over the hump. I think the beginning of the season is going to be really hard. I think being without Natasha Howard and Beck Allen is going to be very hard for the Liberty.
Yes, Beck Allen, especially knowing the offense. We talked a lot about defense for the New York Liberty, which I'm okay with, but we also know offensively they really want to run through that 3-point line, and to not have Beck Allen there. We'll see what Sammy Whitcomb is able to do. We know she can shoot lights out from there as well. But Jackie and Karina, before you go, I would love for you to maybe share some storylines that you're looking for tomorrow. We'll start with you, Jackie. And I don't know, is there anything maybe that you guys have coming out that we should look out for? Jackie, what you got?
Well, okay. So if we want to talk storylines, we've been talking a lot about defense, but I've been thinking about the defense in line with the historical context of the New York Liberty. This is something I've been looking at a lot. I've done a lot of reporting trying to understand what it means to be on the New York Liberty. what characteristics defined this team when it first came out onto the scene in 1997? You know, what was this team known for and why did they move away from that? And it's this idea of the way that they're trying to play basketball now, you're going to maybe see a return to that gritty style that fans adored. You know, people adored the backcourt of Teresa Witherspoon and Becky Johnson, or yes, VJ. And people loved, you know, Becky Hammon as that.
I was going to say, don't you even forget Becky Hammon. Don't you dare forget.
But people just loved how gritty they were. So, you know, we're starting to see that the Liberty are putting out all of these buzzwords of like blue collar players, grit, hard work. And so I find that's all very interesting looking at the legacy of the Liberty. So to tease some things that I've got coming out, there's a piece from me that's coming out tomorrow that's going to shine some light on that reporting that I've done. And also you can see at the Next, I did a good old-fashioned season preview where I went through, you know, what to expect and how the Barclays Center and entering into Brooklyn is as big of a storyline as any.
Well, I can't wait for it. But Karina, what have you got for us?
Yeah, so I'm sure as much as everyone else is, I'm very excited for the return of Sabrina Yonescu. I know all eyes are going to be on her as she is set to play as many games as she can, and hopefully she can stay healthy because an injury like that is always scary when it's that serious. So I'm excited to see her ball out.
I think what was so telling in the presser today is that Serena. What? Apparently, I just have Serena on my mind. Serena Williams. I think it's because Sabrina said that she was playing tennis. That's it. You see how I did that? You see what I did right there? Anyway, but Sabrina said that she knew she wasn't going to be the player that she was when she came into the WNBA as a rookie. She said she was going to be better. And the crazy thing is that she was pretty dang good in 2.5 games last year. So if that's the energy that Sabrina Yonescu is bringing, I don't know. Well, I'm excited either way. So Karina and Jackie, thank you so much for talking all things New York Liberty with us. But Hayley and I, we've got to buzz through. We've got some teams to recap before our next guest. But before we do that, thank you to Jackie. Thank you to Karina. So Hayley, that was, I mean, New York is a team. We spent some time there because we had two guests, but this is like, that's one of the teams that as we're going through our live preview of the 2021 WNBA season, that we really needed to spend some time with. Number one pick coming in, lots of potential, new coach, new owner, new arena until, you know, the Rona hit. And it just didn't pan out. And now they retool, and there are some things that team is still going to have to figure out. But another team that did some pretty heavy lifting in the offseason is the Chicago Sky. And I think it was already alluded to earlier on the show, but I mean, landing Candice Parker? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, like she's obviously in her 13th season Defensive Player of the Year. Like her value is not going down. And they were already a good team last year. Obviously, you have Allie Quigley, Courtney Vandersloot. I'm very high on Diamond DeShields. I know she had to leave the bubble due to personal reasons, but she led the Sky in scoring in 2019. And she's a player I love because she, no matter who she's playing, she will make sure she's the best player on the court always. And I love that tenacity from her. And she's just, you know, her success is hers. She's going to attribute, you know, she's somebody who, if she wants that basket, she's going to go get it. And so I'm really excited to see, with the addition of Candice Parker, it's like, you know, they absolutely are a team who, yeah, last year they made the playoffs and then, you know, they lost. And this year I think it's losing's not an option for the Sky. They knew what they were doing, trying to get Candice Parker. And we saw today they they had to make a lot of cuts to make sure they have room for Candice Parker and all their stars.
It was Lexi Brown, Brittany Boyd. I mean, those two were tough. I mean, all of the cuts are tough, but those two were tough because, speaking of New York, Brittany Boyd, really been trying to find a place in the league. But Lexi also bouncing around with Minnesota for a little bit here and there. So I think those cuts are tough, but this Chicago, team, they are paying a Candice Parker salary. Like, you have to make space. It's to the point where, we heard that Coach Wade was saying that they might have to run short to be under the salary cap. And a lot of that is that pull, right, that Candice Parker brings. But now it's a matter of if it's going to pay off. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about, there is some drama, and we didn't really get a lot from Chicago camp, but Gabby Williams suspended, apparently unbeknownst to Gabby Williams herself.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, I think something that I love so much about the WNBA is that the players are so transparent. Like, it's not a league where things happen and they're on Twitter and they're posting their memes and their GIFs and they're saying, listen, this is exactly what happened. Here's the tea. And I feel bad for Gabby because she kind of was suspended without notice. And then,
right.
It was the whole thing, oh, well, she's doing it so she can play for France this summer. But then she got traded to the LA Sparks, and it's this whole mess because now she can't play for them. She didn't know about any of this. It's honestly a whole mess. And then obviously there was some talk in media calls about name calling and this and that, and it's just been messy, to be honest.
Messy.
Like, really, nobody knows what's going on.
Very, very messy. We see the Bet Online title odds there. Do you think that's fair, Hayley, for this? As we see in the chat, wait a minute, Soliotis. Does that mean I get to talk about women's hockey again? I don't know. But we always, exactly. I love talking to Canadians. It's fantastic. But we see the odds there. Do you think those are fair odds? Where do you see Chicago falling in the pecking order regular season? And then what do you think that means for the playoffs?
I think they're going to finish pretty high the way they did last year. My only thing is, like you said, because they're going to have to run short to run under that salary cap, their players are going to be very tired, and that's the issue.
Yes.
Even before all this, they were already said they were only taking 11, and now they've cut 5 players. Even they drafted Natasha Mack and cut her today. Like Shyla Heel hasn't even been able to play yet because she's been in Australia. So they're taking a risk on her, not to say I don't think she's good, but just they're taking that risk on her. It's going to be very hard for them. Yes, they have a lot of that cohesion because kind of their starting players are sticking around. Obviously, they're not going to get rid of Allie Quigley or Courtney Vandersloot. But, the addition of Candice Parker, you immediately think, oh, they're going to do so well. But because they're going to lack a bit of that depth, like, yes, their starting 5 are going to be crazy strong. But after that, it's kind of, okay, but who are we replacing them with after 30 minutes? And I think that's where you might get the same result you get last year where they lost in the first round of the playoffs.
Yes, I think it was on Twitter Spaces just before we hopped on. The fantastic LaChina Robinson was saying, hey, I like Chicago as a team. They're young, they're scrappy. They've got great talent. If they're healthy, they're going to be great. But you gotta get to a series first, right?
Exactly.
If you want to be legit, you got to get to a series first. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair for James Wade. What is this? 3 or 4 full seasons as head coach?
I think it's 4. I think it's 4. Don't quote me on that, but I think about it.
Yeah, it's either 3 or 4. But that's enough time. That's enough time to sink your teeth in. Diamond DeShields, unfortunately, plagued with injury last season, and then also had an abrupt, shall we say, departure from the Wubble, not fully explained. There might be some energy, but not good Ari Chambers energy. Maybe some like bad juju, auntie needs to smudge her sage type energy happening in Chicago. I don't know. And so where do we think that bodes for now? Candice Parker coming in, can she bring that championship style that she had for a time in LA? Like, does that translate right away? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I know we're going to talk about LA in a second, but I think she is going to bring some good energy only because, the comments she made after they were eliminated from the playoffs last year. She wasn't satisfied. She was very upset with how things ended. She wanted to go all the way. And I think, like you said, that Chicago team, things were a little bit messy, as they kind of still are, but things were messy in that wobble season. And I think now that they kind of have somebody like that to be their leader, to kind of hold it together, okay, the goal is a title. And that's what we're going to do. I think that things are going to be hopefully a little different. But again, right now, they're still kind of messy. So I'm hoping that they can kind of figure it out at the beginning of the season, work out those kinks in the first few games, and then kind of find out, okay, this is our starting five, this is our bench, and this is our game plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another coach that's going to really have to figure things out, coach/GM, because James Wade, coach/GM. We've already talked about Cheryl Reeve, coach/GM. And this offseason, the Los Angeles Sparks, they announced that, oh my goodness, Jackie Powell, classic J Powell, back on the scene. Let's go. But we're talking about that GM head coach combo, and Derek Fisher is the newest member of the club.
I don't think we talk about how much of a heavy-duty responsibility that is. Having to figure out an entire collective bargaining agreement in months, or at least that's sort of what the timeline was for Derek Fisher. It was a lot to take on. And some could argue that maybe he didn't have enough time to understand what was going on going into free agency. And, they lose Chelsea Gray, they lose CP3, obviously. So I think it is a large, large undertaking to do both. And I give major props to those who do it and do it very successfully. Cheryl Reeve.
The best.
Yes.
I think we're all in agreement there. So yeah, yep, exactly. I mean, but it's true. It's true. And it takes a lot. Get the sense, a little bit of tea with actually someone who is started training camp on the roster, but might potentially start the regular season on the bench as a coach. Simone Augustus. Now, Simone's move to LA was very interesting when it comes to the Reeve factor, but we might have to save that for another live stream. Let's look at what Derek Fisher did in the off season. We just talked about Skytown. Gets Gabby. Will Gabby be available? Lots of questions. Who knows? But also picks up Erica Wheeler and Amanda Zowie B. Hayley, your thoughts on, I don't think I should talk about another Erica because it's just going to be gloating. So what are your thoughts about Erica Wheeler coming from Indiana to LA?
Again, I think those Indiana players were at a little bit of a disadvantage last year. Like, truly, we don't know what was going on with that team last season. A mess. I'm sorry to be rude to Indiana because I love the jerseys this year. Don't know what you're doing on the court, but a mess. So I think, obviously, you lose the point god, Chelsea Gray.
The god.
I think this is another chance where, LA is obviously a strong team. They finished in the third or fourth seed last season. So, they're a pretty strong team that, they have a lot of veteran players, which is nice because, you look at a team like the Liberty and last year it's like, okay, well, they're experienced. Whereas you're coming to an LA team and it's like you're coming to a team that kind of has people who are a little bit more established, know what they're doing. So I think that's a good pickup for them. Obviously, you're not going to replace Chelsea Gray, but also she can develop more than she did in Indiana. So I think that's a good pickup from Derek Fisher.
And what do you make of, we see Tay, I was looking at these comments and I think, yes, the GM, Derek Fisher, doing a lot of stuff. It's definitely catching eyes in the women's basketball community, but is it going to stick? And do we think that these odds are fair given Fisher's record as a head coach in the league? And again, just everything else that's happened in the offseason and even in the last hour or so in the WNBA. Do you like these odds, Hayley, that we get from Bet Online for LA this season?
I think it's hard now with the Augustus news. I mean, obviously, I think she's going to be a great coach, but that's definitely a loss off the team. So I'm not sure if I'm as high on them. Again, like we were talking about, there's some teams that have crazy, like, low odds. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be tough only because I know we're all very high on teams like the Minnesota Lynx and things like that who are definitely going to be teams to beat. So I'm not sure. Again, it's hard when you lose somebody like Candice Parker, who has only played for this team and is a leader on this team, Defensive Player of the Year. You're losing that, and you have to try and fill that in with somebody who's newer to the team. I'm not sure I see them having that high of odds. I personally would not be putting them in the finals. They're not a Final 2 team for me. I can see you agree with me. Thank you. So yeah, I don't incredibly agree with those odds. I think they're still going to be a good team, but I don't see them going all the way. No.
Yeah, I think that's a bit ambitious. Before we get to Dallas, which is another franchise that I have questions, okay? I have serious questions. But Jackie, before we close out LA, we're going to keep this New York connection alive. One player that I'm really looking to see, akin to what we said about Natalie Achanwa earlier, to really break out and prove that they belong here in the WNBA and prove why they were a number 2 pick for Tulsa back in the day. That's Amanda Zahui B. Free agent, leaves New York, goes to LA. Quickly, what do you think she will be able to do? Not just with Derek Fisher, who's high on her potential, but she's reunited with Fred Williams, who drafted her out of the Minnesota Gophers program.
So that's a very strong connection. I think that's going to bode very well for Amanda Zahui B. And if Fred Williams is willing to take that extra time to be with her in the gym, I think that's going to be huge. Something I want to note about Zahui is I think I saw somewhere that she is not reporting to Sweden for is the Swedish national team not in Eurobasket, or are they and she's not reporting? I missed it, but I saw something somewhere that she's not going over to Eurobasket. I will have to fact check. But
well, this is interesting because LA was another team that made some massive moves today. So Simone Augustus off the roster is what we've seen reported. As of the time I got onto this live stream, I hadn't seen that come official from the team yet, but it's sounding like Simone Augustus is going to be retiring, joining the team as a bench boss, because now teams can carry 4 coaches if at least one of the coaches, any of the coaches, head coach, assistant coach, is a former WNBA player. That's a paid position. So they can carry 4 coaches. But I wonder if it's because there's some competition for that LA roster spot. And again, Zahui kind of needs to have a good WNBA season, in my opinion, to stay in the WNBA long term.
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of potential there. I just think it's unfortunate that again, there was kind of a black hole of development that happened in New York, which is really shocking because Teaspoon was there. And the guards in particular that have come out of that program speak very highly of Teaspoon, but it just seems like the pieces to the puzzle didn't all click in tight together. There were a few synapses that were not firing. So I don't know. I think that will be interesting. But Jackie, you've been a trooper here with us. Of course, we have to give you praise for everything that you're doing over at the Next and everywhere else. But I might actually get to see you socially from a social distance in Brooklyn tomorrow. So we'll catch up then. But Jackie Powell from the Next, thank you for joining us on our live stream.
Thank you for having me, and have a great rest of the show.
Oh, we're gonna crush it, right, Hayley? We're gonna crush it here. We're going guns blazing right into Dallas. Now, this is a team, we talked about how young New York is. Dallas is there. They were young last year, and then with all the draft picks that they had going into 2021, they're only younger, but we have someone else holding it down. Oh, wait, do I see orange hoodie? Do I
That's
see
right.
Ari 28?
That's right.
Let's go. Ari Graham also holding it down for the next. Let's go. How we
Yes,
doing?
yes. I'm doing great. I'm so excited. Everything's getting going. I couldn't be more excited about the start of the season tomorrow.
All right, so we're going to hop right in here. Now, you see, we're wearing our Rebel jerseys, right? We've got
Yeah.
Connecticut Sun. You know I had to go here. Like, we starting out hot.
Okay.
We got Phoenix, we got Connecticut. There is some drama with the Rebels, but we heard some news that it sounds like Dallas is gonna they didn't really go through all the proper channels to have that first Rebel edition properly vetted. There was just some history that we really don't need to be bringing back up. But it sounds like they're gonna get a new uniform. But uniforms aside, with Dallas, even there's still, I don't know, like, do we feel like Dallas has got it together? They got Vicky. They got Vicky from New York, you know, where I guess you used to say she's from from Las Vegas, from the Las Vegas staff, but an OG from New York. She's the head coach there now. Do we think that maybe some of the skeletons that have been in the Dallas closet have been swept away for good? We've got Vicky. You've got Charlie Collier. Owakuir is supposed to report at some point. Chelsea Dungy. I mean, do we think that this might be the year that Dallas legitimately stakes a claim for that 6, 7, 8 spot, or are they still going to be clawing for it?
You know, given the experience of the team, I think that they might still be clawing for it. You're going to have Alicia Gray missing for part of May for the 3-on-3 qualifying tournament. You mentioned Awak and Satu, they're going to be integrated in later. So, you know, integrating those players, trying to figure out, you know, an identity, especially offensively, that's going to make it a little more difficult for them.
And the news also came this week, Megan Gustafson out. Ari, how are you feeling about that?
You know, she was a fan favorite, you know, so it's definitely heartbreaking. But I really don't think she got a fair shot under Agler. But, you know, it's tough business.
It's tough business. Ari, I want to get your thoughts, and then Hayley will bring you in too. We see these Bet Online title odds here. Now, we were saying LA might be too high. Is this like too low for that? I don't know. Like, what do y'all feel about these odds?
Yeah, that's a little out of control. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely just a little ways away from being an official title contender. But I think this season, you know, they're definitely laying a good foundation towards that path.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, they have all 4 of their picks making a roster, so that's a good foundation that you have a young talent coming in. And obviously you have Satu Sabali, who hopefully can stay healthy this whole year. I know that she just won a championship in Turkey, so hopefully she's coming off that momentum and bringing that to Dallas. Obviously, you have RK, who literally led the league in scoring last year, and she's only going into her 3rd year, which is crazy. Like, she did that in her 2nd year. So I'm hoping that that momentum can kind of follow up. I think we saw a lot of games from that Dallas team that were, you know, they're just kind of right there. And hopefully now adding a lot of this young talent. And obviously we know that the talent in the league is only, you know, growing. It's so hard to make a roster. So I'm hoping that they can, you know, those games that they almost had last year, they can actually make it over the hump this year. So I think that's a little mean, the odds. I think they have a little bit of a better chance than that.
I don't know. That's a disgruntled Dallas Wings fan from way back. Because, like, let's keep it real, Ari. Like, this is a team that from the Liz Cambage years, right? From the Skylar Diggins years, even from, you know, some of them Tulsa years has been that close, right? That close to making it proper into the playoffs. Do you think that realistically there's going to be something different? And, you know, not something, but someone. What are some of the additions that Dallas made that you think will really turn the tide for them? If you think it will.
Yeah, no, first you got to start off with the new head coach, Vicki Johnson. You know, Jackie brought up earlier the grittiness that she had with New York. I think she's going to bring that same mentality to the team. So I think that's going to be a major difference too. Here, Mariah Jefferson is going to be a really important piece for the Wings this season to aid Arike in getting off the ball. And, just having more options on defense, being able to spread the floor. I think Bella is going to have an interesting season as well. I think we're going to see a lot of growth from her, especially, given the opportunity until Awak comes in inside too as well.
And before we let you go here, of course, we're here talking women's basketball, Locked On Women's Basketball live stream. We are on the eve of the tip-off of the 2021 season, which is the 25th season of the WNBA.
Yes.
Vicki Johnson holding it down. She talked earlier in media in training camp about that. But I want to get the tea on Marina Mabry. I'm here in New York. She a Jersey girl. I don't know. I heard on Clubhouse somewhere that folks thought she was going to get the axe. Did you ever doubt Marina on this team, especially with Arike, her teammate there?
Yeah, no, not at all. Last season, some of the chemistry that you saw on offense, when there was some, it was between Arike and Mabry. And I think that was really important to have going into this season. So I never doubted it. I mean, they have a great chemistry, and I think she's going to be someone that's going to need to be here, to keep Arike here.
I agree. Well, Ari, before we let you go, we know you know all things Dallas Wings, but where can folks find you? And do you have anything coming up next before we bring in, I think, Brendan? We got Brendan coming up to talk about Phoenix, but Ari, we'll give you the last word.
Okay, yeah, everybody can find me on Twitter at WNBA Love. I just dropped the season preview for the Dallas Wings, talking about everything that's coming up. And, go Wings, I'm excited.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ari Graham, for joining us. And I think, we went from Ari, and we might have an Ari coming up soon. But first, it's Brendan. What's up?
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Oh, we're glad to have you. Thank you so much. You see, we're representing Phoenix here. Got the color scheme that works in your favor.
X Factor.
But Brendan with Uprocks, the WNBA, and this Phoenix team. A lot of experts are saying that Phoenix is going to be a top 4 contender. Are you buying the hype for 2021?
It's funny. I feel like going into the past couple of WNBA seasons, I've been very high on Phoenix and have maybe been a little ahead of myself. So the GM survey this morning, I felt was pretty empty of Mercury references, but I think they obviously have that star power, right? They obviously kind of have to be in that conversation when you mention the best of the best, but they've left us empty too many times, I feel like, to be positive that they can do that at this point.
I mean, I'm of mixed feelings here, and I don't know, Hayley, how you feel. On the one hand, Diana Taurasi, like I think we just end the stream there. Like, it's just done, right? Unfortunately, though, Diana Taurasi doesn't play all 5 positions, and it's questionable how much in a 40-minute game she shows up for defense. Let's just be honest. But I think that Phoenix has really added some elements, including maybe a Canadian. You see, I just love putting that out there for you, Hayley. But do you think the additions of Kia Nurse, and then we'll come to you, Brendan, do you think the additions of Kia Nurse are going to make a difference, given what we've seen the addition of Skylar Diggins-Smith to a DT Phoenix team have been?
Yeah, obviously we saw the chemistry between DT and Skylar last year when there was games they were dropping 50-plus combined points. So they definitely have that chemistry there. And like I said before, Kia Nurse is a shooter, and she can add that to the team. But also, again, this is a team who you look at the roster on paper and you think, who's going to beat this team? But then sometimes they lack a bit of that chemistry. You can see in the comments too, like last year, Brittany Griner left the bubble, and so they were kind of missing that position, and they didn't have an answer for that. So I think there's just, some kinks they really need to work out. Again, on paper, like who's beating Phoenix, but there's definitely some chemistry in positioning. And like you said, defense wins championships, kind of making sure that every player is kind of that two-way versatile player. And then, yes, I think people would be higher on them. but you have to figure that out first because we saw the inconsistencies in the bubble last year.
Yeah, for sure. And on that defense, I wonder if Kia Nurse is maybe a player that could be that. Resume-wise, yes. As someone who's seen her in New York, although that comes with some asterisks, which we've already talked about, I'm not sure. Brendan, what are your thoughts about the infusion of Kia Nurse and her history of being a defensive player versus what she was able to contribute as a part of the New York Liberty in the last 2 seasons?
Yeah, it'll definitely help. I think what you're getting with Nurse, as far as I see it, is a player who's a little more trustworthy than what they've had at that spot in the past. So they had Sophie Cunningham the past couple of years. She's if she can do anything, it's obviously to play defense. So they've had options there, but it's like once you get behind that in the depth chart where they started to have some questions. Nia Coffey was with this team in the bubble. She was hurt a lot, so to be fair, but wasn't really able to earn consistent playing time. They just haven't had a lot of depth at that wing spot. So Nurse being able to just step in, be the starter, which I'm pretty positive she will be from day one, and lock it down there, have Cunningham behind her, have some more options, I think will be the big thing. And, of course, she can stay on the floor a little easier than Sophie. Sophie is not the shooter that Nurse is. So it's that balance of offense and defense. And then, I don't know. I mean, thinking about the defense in general, a big question I have is, will Skylar be able to take that slack off of Diana? Because it's you start to piece things together, and it's a lot of pressure on Turner and Griner to really clean up everything at the rim. And that sounds good in theory, but we've seen a lot of defenses built that way that don't last, right? So I think who can they get that perimeter defense out of? It's going to be Nurse, it's going to be Cunningham, but we're going to see Skylar and Diana play so many minutes that they're going to need to do that as well.
Yeah, you said DT and defense, and I just like immediately think of like her frustration, like slap, you know, and she's like, "You didn't call my foul, so you better freaking call this one." Oh, it's great. It's great. So many good things. Okay, Brendan, let's talk about Brittany Griner. I think that there was a lot of speculation swarming around Griner coming in. It seemed like there were a lot of people that wanted to, I guess, allude to some drama between Griner and Phoenix. Do you know anything of where that relationship stands as far as Griner, her commitment to the Mercury franchise?
Yeah, well, go back to the bubble, and Coach Sandy Brondello's message was things are good with Brittany. She's going to take time to, figure out her mental and physical well-being. We saw a lot of players that either chose not to go to the bubble or ultimately had to step away. So in that way, Griner not unique. Brondello maintained that same message throughout the offseason. When I would check in with the team, that was the message I got. They're not trading her. That was consistent throughout the offseason, and that all things were good. Diana Taurasi had a press availability midway through the offseason as well when she re-signed with the team and came back for yet another season, and she had the same message. I have no ill will toward Brittany. I'm excited to compete for a championship with her, and we'll see what happens. So publicly, they've been unified in that message, and I think she just has a lot to prove on the court this year, because the reality is she wasn't good enough last season when she wasn't there. They were a lot better when she left the bubble, and she's an MVP caliber talent. We all say that about her all the time, and it's just kind of time for a season like that. It will be a very different role for her this year, though, I think.
Yeah, that is a word, Brendan. That is a word. Now, Hayley, we've been talking a lot about the master craft that is coaching, especially if you're also a GM. Sandy Brondello, it sounds like, is going to have to really maintain that balance between these massive personalities, which make Phoenix such a fun team to watch, but is exactly why, as Brendan has said, and if you look at some of the comments that we see coming through, is why they implode. And our man behind the curtain, Sean here, if you could pull up those bet online odds, I also want to just see what y'all think about the over under as well. But Hayley, Sandy, do you think she's up to the task?
It's hard. Like you kind of saw it last year, and I love Sandy. Like I'm very high on Sandy, but just it's hard, especially like when you have somebody who's been in the league like as long as DT has. It's kind of like I feel like it's a situation where yes, obviously she's good, she's the quote unquote GOAT, but like, can you really tell her like, okay, you have to go work on your defense now kind of thing? Like, is she going to listen? Because that's one of their weaknesses, is that their guard defense needs a lot of work. But it's like, you know, she's just going to get mad and tell people she's going to meet them in the lobby and then not actually, you know, like, it's kind of those things. I think it's super hard. And again, like, if people are going through things like BG left for personal reasons, okay, if somebody's going through that, it's kind of like, what, you know, how do you deal with those things? And I think that's probably the hardest part. I think somebody like Kia is pretty coachable. Like I said, I think she had a rough season last year in New York, and I think she's ready to be on a team that will win games and do well. So I think having the addition of players like that is a step in the right direction. But Sandy's definitely got her work cut out for her with this team, absolutely.
And Brendan, we see the Bet Online title odds there. You think that's fair? You like those odds?
I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's, you know, compared to some of these other teams, I believe Minnesota, Washington, Seattle, all ahead of them, maybe Chicago as well. I feel like that's fair. I mean, this is a team that, for better or worse, has not lived up to the expectation for a couple of seasons now. They've hovered around 500. They've had early playoff exits. They just haven't earned that respect, I guess you can say, from the line makers or from, you know, fans around the league, as our comments show, like you said. So if it all works, it could be really awesome, right? It could be one of the better teams in the entire WNBA for the regular season and into the playoffs. They have the talent, but can the pieces fit? Can Griner sort of adjust her game? Can the defense work? I think there are a lot of questions, and you know, that's the good thing about the games. They give us the answers, right? That's what we'll see tomorrow.
That's right. That's why we play the games. Well, Brendan, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I don't get to see you very much. That's why we gotta love these video chats here. But we appreciate you chiming in, Brendan. And Hayley, I think also I bid farewell to you, my friend.
Yes, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm just so glad that I had someone that appreciated my women's hockey talk infused into WNBA. But thank you so much. If you are not already following Hayley, make sure you're doing that, because she's got the whole WNBA on lock north of my border here in New York. So for all of our Canadian friends, make sure you're giving Hayley a follow. But we are going to keep the show rolling now. Auntie does a lot of talking. That's what I do. So we definitely have some teams, including this Connecticut Sun team that I got. Okay with the
Let me tell you, Erica. I had to change because I had on a hoodie. I literally had on a hoodie. But I was like, oh, it's jersey time tonight? This just came in.
Let's go. Yes. Okay, but wait, tell us who you rocking.
I am rocking actually Nneka Ogwumike. So we have our PA president because Miss Chene said, hey, you're going to watch this doc tonight and send a jersey. So I was like, yes, ma'am. Please go hard.
That part.
Yes, ma'am. Please go hard.
Yes,
so we're rocking the president today.
Okay, yes, President WNBPA. Okay, well,
Period.
In case y'all don't know, we have the fantastic Arielle Chambers here, aka Ari, aka the woman who does it all. She do it all. Just be doing it all.
I learned from Auntie though. I learned from Auntie.
Stop it. She right though. She right. But of course, also just built a whole platform. Like you said, we don't know Jada, but we gonna get with HighlightHER. Okay.
Yeah, period. We just gonna leave the old name where it needs to be.
Listen. But you know what? You created a whole vertical, and now you are able to be a driver along with. Now you got a team. Okay,
Girl,
let me find out.
Hi, people.
You got a team and are just doing amazing things. But while we have you, we already talked about LA. You know, we talked about your girl Candice and what Chicago is doing. But we have a few other teams that we have to get to, including Get Sun. Okay, let's go. First of all, we're going to talk about Connecticut and Atlanta, and we're going to lump those two together because they put out their broadcast teams, and we have a few hashtag Team More Melanin, hashtag Team Black Rosie women on these calls. So let's first just talk about what Renee Montgomery
and that's the thing. That's
a whole
the thing.
mood.
Look, you put a Black woman in the ownership group and watch the magic that can radiate from the top.
See what happens. Black Rosie, do it. Let's go.
I love the brand of you. I love the brand of you. It's so great. But no, like, I love what Renee's doing. She's getting the community involved. She's making it reflective of Atlanta as a whole. She's making it reflective of the league that we have. And it's funny because it's so monumental when you have 4 Black women to call a game, but nobody second guesses it when they're all white men. But people need to realize Tab and LaChina and Angel and Autumn have all been around Atlanta basketball for so long. Like, I've known all of them for years around the Atlanta dream. So it's a homecoming for Angel. Tab and LaChina, they've been on. And then Autumn has worked her way to that. She has gone through interning there to going to the NCAA to 2K. She knows what she's talking about. And that's what I love. I love the preparation. And then, like, it's funny because as Black women or women of color in general, we're so overly prepared for things. So I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to deliver on broadcast and bring the fire. Because when I saw the Sparks broadcast, I'm like, where is Angel? But popping up. Busy. She said, no, we're going to take it back to who's been true to this. And so I love that.
Ooh, not new, but true. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we talked about the all Black women that will be calling the games. But what are they going to be calling, Ari? Like, what is Atlanta looking like? Because now we about to have tip off tomorrow on tomorrow, but they are with an interim coach. What happened?
You know, when the bad calls from NCAA, Nikki Collins don't answer it. And you have Mike Peterson, who's actually used to coaching. I mean, this is going to sound crazy. Used to coaching Black women because he comes from Wake Forest program, the ACC. And I remember the personalities with them in the time he coached there. So to be able to create a culture that can have a new perspective. And we heard his windmill talk. I'm excited to see how he really makes those personalities blend, because it's no secret that they have a lot of personality. But I'm looking forward to a fast-paced backcourt. I'm looking forward to, Ari actually stepping up and being a leader that they didn't necessarily have in the point guard position last year. But to see that work together with some great mid-range shooting, with return of Hayes into the league, because she took a year off last year. I think a lot of people we don't talk about how Tiffany wasn't present for Atlanta last year, and then in combination with that, with their post presence, Elizabeth Williams is kind of their rock. She's the only one that's like been there for that long, and so I'm interested to see that. And then you have Shakina Strickland that's going to be coming off the bench and given that she got a little stroke.
Yes, that is, and C. Willie, a whole bucket. Like you said,
who's touching it?
The energy is gonna be off the chain. Like, if y'all can't run, you're not catching Atlanta. You're not catching them. Which is how Connecticut gets on. I know you know something about that. That's how Connecticut used to play, but they're a little bit of a different team.
Half the team's on Atlanta.
You're right. And now Nikki gone. See how they do? See how they do? But when it comes to Connecticut, this is a team where Kurt definitely has positioned his team to be in the conversation until proven otherwise. They had a molasses type slow start and still found their way into the playoffs. Looking at what they have coming in, we heard on Twitter Spaces with LaChina and Roz that Dejanay Carrington may be someone that people are looking for a rookie of the year type situation. Do you think Connecticut has enough to maintain that playoff pedigree that Kurt Miller has? And now that Jennifer Rosati as president, really wants to continue.
I think despite what our opinion is, Connecticut thrives off of people underestimating them. So either way, I think that they're going to be fine for the stretch and regaining composure. You have leadership like Dewana Bonner. You return JJ, who such a great all-around player, and then you have Dejanay Carrington, who's been performing really well in preseason. I don't take too much stock in the preseason games because that's a chance for coaches to experiment with what the chemistry could be for teams. Right. So I definitely don't take much stock in it, but for the fact that Dejanay has performed the way she has, I love that for her. She is she's the lone rookie, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. She's the lone rookie on that team, and so she's going to have the opportunity to learn from those vets. And these are vets that stay hungry. For some reason, I never question Connecticut Sun's heart or hunger. That's one thing about it. So I love that about Connecticut, and they're a very gritty-minded team. As I would say, gritty-minded over gritty playing, but just the leadership that they have in their very, very seasons. You have, Jasmine Thomas. You have DeWanna Bonner. JJ is the rock. I'm excited to see one fun storyline for me because I love fun, fluffy stories. Is the Jones sisters? The Jones sisters. That's so cute.
Yes, that is so cute. I love that. I absolutely love that. And we see the Bet Online title odds there right around the middle of the pack. So we'll see if Connecticut can get some early wins, okay? Because that's not what they did last year. But wait a minute.
The past few years, though. So.
Okay, that part. But Ari, wait a minute. I think Sean, the man behind the curtain, has some folks that we might know.
Hey, bring in the squad.
Hey, let's go. We got the Jasmines, Jasmine Baker and Jasmine Brown up in the house. So now we gotta make sure we differentiate. So we've got Jasmine Brown. Echo. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Is that a Monarchs? Is that the Monarchs? Okay.
Come on, throwback.
I love that throwback. Works with Ari, of course, at HighlightHER. I love it. Speaking of the Monarchs, I don't know, Jasmine Baker, you know about something with Tisha and them shorts? Oh no, we got game 2. What you doing?
Y'all know I stay working. I'm gonna keep grinding for y'all.
I love it. We were just talking about Connecticut. We still have a few other teams to talk about. I want to, y'all know, because y'all know this is the mini tribe, so we be in the mini tribe chat. But y'all know that I had some thoughts about what Washington was going to do. So Brown, we're going to come to you for this. What Washington is going to do now, on paper, they were looking good in 2020. Then Rona. Now they're still looking good in 2021, but Elena Deladon not really cleared for activity. No Misaman. Now, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Tina Charles. Now, for those of y'all who may not know, Auntie got into a little something with Tina. All good. But I want to get your thoughts, Brown. Where do you see Tina Charles? What do you see her role being throughout her time with Washington, but especially early on with EDD out?
The role is hers. I mean, she just has to step up, and which I don't doubt that she's not going to do. But I expect her to really make a presence in the paint and make sure that the rest of the team gets, make sure that the offense is flowing. No Tiana, as you just put up on the screen, no Tiana, no Meesman, Natasha Cloud's coming back. We have that. You have Ariel, Maisha. So I expect them to at least make some noise. I predict that they, depending on how Elena does, they can either be 5th or 8th, in my opinion. But they have the power, they have the offense there. But I think with Meesman and Elena, it's definitely going to be a little bit. The offense is going to definitely look a little bit different. But I trust Tebow. I trust him when he does. It doesn't really matter what squad he has. He's always going to get it done. I don't have any doubt. I just don't think they're going to be at the top like they usually are sometimes.
That is very true. See, that's the difference that I think when people are like, oh, 2020, New York lost Sabrina 2.5 games in, and what do we expect and all this stuff. I was like, did y'all see what Washington did? Did y'all see what Washington did? And made the playoffs on the last day? So I think that's part of the reason that we see Jay Baker, some of those odds up there. Like, people really are favoring Washington. I mean, if Elena Deladon can come back after having 3 bulge discs, winning MVP regular season, willing her team to a win, if she got a good back,
period.
I don't know.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, she's stepping on you already. See, look at that. Dang.
Okay, go ahead, Baker. Never mind. I'm quiet. I said I'll be quiet. Go ahead.
Wait, Baker? She said Baker.
She said Baker. Yeah, Erica Jasmine Baker.
I sure did say Baker.
Oh, my bad. I didn't even hear a question.
You see, all right, go ahead, Ari.
Thank you. I know I would call it accordingly. Is it a stretch? Is it a stretch to really, really think that Tina Charles might be an MVP contender just because she's going to have to step up? And I feel like Natasha Cloud trusts her enough, and I think that the offense would be structured, through Tina, like you were saying in the press conference, like how the distribution. But right now, she's having to step up because Elena's not there yet, and they had that trust in her, and she's on a better team now. And so it's just that's a case that we have to look at. Also, considering when Elena does come back, her 80% is better than a lot of people's 100%. So between Tina and Elena collectively with a Natasha, they all have championship pedigrees, except Tina's still trying to get a chip in the W, but they're all winners in their whole careers. Like Tina's an Olympian. I think Washington is going to be just fine. I think that they could be better if Alicia didn't get hurt, and that would be the defensive prowess that would be just fire to set them over the edge. But I definitely think Tina Charles can be the the MVP contender, and she should be in conversation. I understand we talk a lot about Stewie, but that's kind of a boring story right now. But Tina, I think that could be a really, really cool consideration for MVP.
Not boring.
I love Stewie, but I don't want to talk about her. We already know her potential. We know her potential. We know what she can do.
You're right. So, Baker. Now, Ari said her business. What do you think about MVP? So you could say Tina or whoever else. Like, who do you think is in the race here?
I honestly think. I don't want to say Stewie, so I guess I'm leaning more towards A'ja Wilson. I'm always gonna bet on A'ja. It's just her potential. It's just. I just love watching her. I will love watching her play. I love watching her game grow as she grows off the court as well. To me, I picked her last season as the MVP, and of course, she came through for me. And
undeniably,
my reasoning was, I said nothing screams MVP like a Black woman who brings the beauty shop to the bubble. Okay.
Listen, actually, you make an excellent point. So
she did what she had to do.
She did what she had to do. I like that. I don't know what the equivalent in 2021 is going to be though, because we're gonna be a market. So she gonna have to move some mountains. But she got the dew in her corner, so she gonna make that work.
That's for her shooting a three. If she can get that down, it's over.
I mean, we are going with the number one player on the number one team. I mean, it would be A'ja. It would be. But is that the narrative? But is that the narrative that the media is going to try to push? Because remember, we pick and choose what our narratives for MVP is going to be, and so it's like sometimes it's the stellar player, but then when it's convenient, it's the number one player on the number one team. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'm like.
All right, Tay in the chat over here agreeing with you. It tends to be given to the number one player on the number one team. Auntie don't get a vote. I don't know. Maybe that'll change in 2021. But I don't subscribe to that. Like I have pushed. I'm with Tina because when she was with New York and winning all them Player of the Week, Player of the Month, Player of the Galaxy, whatever they called it then when we had conferences. There was no reason that Tina Charles shouldn't have won.
2016 was robbed.
Now you see, look at what you're wearing though. That's who won it.
You already know. But look, wait. I know Jasmine hates these, but I got them here. Don't play.
Okay. All right. I love it. And you know what? I like that Tina pick because obviously Tina is ready. She put me on notice that she's ready to come for the haters. So that seems like MVP type qualities to me. So I like
the quote was I'm coming for all of y'all.
For all of y'all. She did. All of y'all. So ain't nobody safe, y'all. Ain't nobody safe. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But I want to get to Indiana. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't think we're going to get an MVP candidate from Indiana. However, I think most improved could be an option. I really think that Victoria Vivians is ready to have a season. What y'all think? Let's go to Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even going from her, like the draft and how everybody thought, she should have went higher. I think people kind of forgot about her a little bit, but I think even with the whole dynamic of the fever and everything that happened, I think this would be a great season for them to kind of be like, look, y'all not gonna forget about us this season. So I think her being in, I'm rooting for Tiara McCowan though. I'm rooting for her. I've been rooting for her forever. So I need game from her because I like her a lot. I need that to happen.
Yes. She got some eyebrows. She ready, okay? And was modeling them Stranger Things jerseys. But I want to get into Kaiser because Ari, I know you and I were on a media avail together, and Kaiser is different, okay? She really is putting this whole package together and understands the game, and that has to come from the lineage of professional basketball players that she comes from.
Yeah. And she knows the importance of branding, right? You see it with the new age players. They know that they're at a disadvantage because the league is so small, right? And so how can you bring to the table something within the team outside of your talents? You bring marketability. And that can help you, despite what GMs want to tell you. I had actually a long talk with Tamika Catchings, and she was like, oh, no, it doesn't hurt. Despite what they want to tell you, if you can help the organization sell tickets, it's a business at the end of the day. And so what Kaiser did, she capitalized off the momentum that was happening. You see her signing that lucrative shoe deal with Adidas, and that's the future. That's the future. You have to show up as a performer on the court, but your off the court image and likeness matters. Also, going back to Victoria Vivians, I'm wondering how she's going to bounce back because injuries psychologically, and she's had so many of them. I don't know if that's going to impact her game or not, but I do know she's eager to return to the court. She's in good spirits. That's a fun, half of them are young, so it's fun young team. And then they have a great veteran leadership situation with Jantel and Danielle, and they're just really good people. But as far as Kaiser is going, I think she's made a splash. I talked about her on WNBA Weekly on NBA TV today. She was my don't sleep pick because not for her actual basketball play, but for how she's going to make an impact on the league from a marketing standpoint.
I love that. I absolutely love that. We see the odds from Bet Online. Not great, but I think they're probably fair. I think that Indiana is going to continue to move up closer to kind of like what we've seen Dallas do. It's like every year, like they double dutching in that 8th spot. I think Indiana is going to work their way up to that in the next few years, but I don't think it's going to come together just yet. Marianne Stanley definitely working on defense. I mean, she got Vivian's over here saying in public that she likes to play defense. So that's already different. So we'll see how that works out. That's no shade. That's what Tori said herself.
You're not wrong.
It's true. But we also with Kaiser, you mentioned a shoe deal. Now this is where I want to get Baker involved because she should be the mastermind when it comes to the marketing. We also got some news that speaking of Stewie, it sounds like Stewie's going to be the next player, the 10th overall in WNBA history to get a signature shoe. Now, I don't want to get into that too much because I know we've all talked about it. But Baker, I would love for you to chime in on what Ari was saying about this new group, the marketability, and who will be number 11. Who's going to get the next signature shoe, and why should it be Asia Wilson?
I mean, we can end on that note. I mean,
wait,
really,
that question.
I think we're entering a new stage, a new era of WNBA, quite frankly. And it's fun to see. I think some people are going to be disappointed with the moves that some of these companies make. I think some of these companies are trying to figure out how to make a big splash in the women's sports scene, especially on the basketball level. And I think somebody was arguing with me the other day about Sabrina Yonescu possibly being one of the next individuals to get a signature shoe. And I've heard insiders tell me this, but it's one of those things I think that people have to understand two things. That number one, there's possibly a hype beast element to some of this that is very real right now. And two, and it's not always necessarily bad because it's so much of what we're used to, but people have to understand with this new era that we're going into, it's almost like old heads talking about how things used to be. And it's like, listen, when things change, the game changes. You know what I'm saying? And this is something I've had to come to grips with, is that we want this next generation to enjoy the fruits of the labor that previous generations, did put all that work into. But I think a lot of people are looking at it too from a perspective of the nuance of it all. Well, Black women did most of that work, is the way a lot of people look at it. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I'm like, if Nike doesn't play their cards right, I think more people are going to leave Nike at the same time. And if A'ja Wilson leaves, it's a wrap. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see. I'm very interested to see how this plays out, because it's playing out in real time every day on Twitter, and fans are speaking up. And it's interesting because some of these people are old school fans, and some of these people are new fans who are Gen Z. A lot of them are Gen Z fans who all they've known is Sabrina Yonescu, Paige Beckers. So you're kind of getting that clash of like old school Twitter and like overtime W Slam Twitter, if that makes sense. But at the end of the day, hey, they're talking about the W. So, I mean, the brand is strong.
That part. All right, Brown. Now, you heard Baker talk a little bit about, Nike. You see some athletes leaving. We see that on the WNBA side, but throughout sports. So, the work that you and Ari are doing at HighlightHER, y'all are following this. Is it a trend? Is it too early to call it a trend? Are we on the cusp of this? Is it going to stop? What are your thoughts there as far as athletes taking some agency when it comes to everything that Baker was just talking about? And where does Nike fit into that?
I feel like with everything that's been going on with Nike, it might be a slight unraveling. Even as small as the whole shoe debacle with the bots and the the guy getting caught. It's just a lot going on. And not only are you seeing the women leaving, the men are leaving too. So it's big names. So it's something going on behind the scenes that it's telling itself right now, but it's really going to tell itself. And we're all going to find this out. I don't know, maybe I don't know when, but it's clues there.
I don't know. Maybe we'll get a documentary or something about that. But speaking of documentaries, we're about 15 minutes away from the 144. Now, earlier on Twitter Spaces, last night on Twitter, listen, they did it at 10 p.m. Auntie, that was my lullaby, not because it was boring, but because I was tired, okay? So a lot of people have been talking about the 144, but Ari, I want to come to you because I was listening to the ESPN W Summit earlier today. And Chanae, executive producer for the 144, was asked by LaChina to give an award, of everything that you saw in the documentary. If you had to give an award, who would you give it to? Now, she said two people. She said C. Willie, Courtney Williams, just for being 100% all the time. And then De'Arica Hamby through her daughter, and just having that generational element there to witness everything that we saw in 2020 in the bubble. First, let's start with Courtney, because Courtney Williams is Courtney Williams. And to think about a Courtney Williams being in conversations about social justice, about whether people are going to play or not. And just being in a space that a lot of people are referring to as Groundhog's Day. What are some of the things that you think we might see tonight from C. Willie when it comes to the 144 documentary on ESPN?
A lot of times us as media want to get behind these women so much that we're amplify their voices. They're on the forefront of social justice, but we don't realize that there's another side of things, right? There's another side as they're deciding to take a day of reflection. There are players that are I want the ball because this could be my escape. And so as we're like, no, they don't need to play. Let's get behind them and not needing to play. There's dialogue that's happening. Everybody talks about how the WNBA unites as 144, and they do. But that comes with heavy deliberation. That comes with different factors. People's activism isn't monolithic. Their principles aren't, identical. And it's going to, I think that if I know Courtney well, she wants the ball. She wants to hoop, and that's her thing. That's her thing. That's what she does to feed her family. That's what she does to, she loves it. And so when you have something like you're in a bubble already, you already feel kind of helpless because you're trapped in there. You can't really be marching, or even if you weren't there, you wouldn't be marching. You just don't know. You don't know all their backgrounds. But when you have a situation like that, you have to look at all sides of it. We get, like I said, we get carried away. And that's okay. That's okay, because we have that inherent, we got to step up on the forefront. But even talking to Lasia, who is on the forefront, she was like, Ari, I was tired. I didn't want to fight anymore. Like, I was tired. And you have to look at situations like that. And I think that by Chiney allowing us to have an inside look at what really happened in the bubble, you saw that they're going to showcase the deliberation for the day of reflection. And you saw how Nneka was like, so we're just not going to play. And then Natalie was like, fever is out, whatever, for the day. I'm not saying it's forever for the day, but these are layered conversations. And I think that Chiney will show us that, and it will be expressed in that. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to Courtney giving an alternative opinion, because even with the Shaq situation with lowering the rims, we were all like, we shouldn't lower. And Courtney was like, I want to see somebody's head. And then she created an event about dunking and
same
go
thing.
over 9 feet. So I challenge us to be open-minded to all opinions dealing with social justice, to all opinions dealing with the game. And I think that's what Courtney's going to bring.
Yeah, I think, Ari, what I hear you saying is that there are going to be elements that we don't usually get when it comes to the storytelling of the women, of the players in the WNBA. And I think a part of that, Brown, is because the storyteller is different. Chiney is involved in this. So when you think about that, and as of course, HighlightHER, great at telling stories and really amplifying that from the athlete perspective. When you think about the 144 documentary in that way, Jasmine Brown, what excites you, or what are you looking, for as far as, ways that maybe we haven't seen the WNBA, even outside of the bubble, outside of some of the social justice stuff, from what you've seen so far, what excites you?
Yeah, I mean, the personal part of it is definitely what I'm most excited about, because having that player that was actually playing through it and have a say in it, instead of having people from outside interview and put that together. I just think having that person that can tell us other things that we might not even know about, that we might not have even caught, that can also bring forth another point of discussion as well. It might spark something else new before tomorrow. So I'm really excited to see what she's gonna, and I want to see this her overall product. Because working around her before, she was always busy going to run. So I'm like, wow, I want to see what she did in her spare time, because she always moving.
That's the crazy part. And Baker, this is where I would love to get you to give us a little bit of a big picture thought. So not just thinking of the 144, but thinking about the rare chances that we get to see Black women leading projects at places like ESPN, because this is not an ESPN thing. Like, we see this everywhere. And we have two people here, yourself included, that are a part of this shift and this change that's happening in women's basketball and now permeating other places. But when you hear an active WNBA player, an active woman athlete is executive producing an exclusive look to her own league from a business perspective, what do you think it took for Chiney to be able to get all of this project greenlit?
I'm always inspired by Chiney and her sisters. To me, I always look at them as like coming from the Houston Comets tree anytime I think of women who have come out of Houston. Just pride, because what she's done, it was so funny you asked me this, because I was reflecting on this earlier today. I was like, wow, she like reinvested, in back into the league, and then she's always finding ways to. It reminds me so much of what we're all constantly doing, trying to find ways to reinvest in the league and make sure people understand, like, we're doubling down on investing in women's sports, and it's that simple. And I think she is a great example of that, because for so long we've had great examples in media, but for examples, and this is why I'm so proud to be not only friends but colleagues with y'all, because so often we don't see enough. For the longest time we just hadn't seen Black women in women's sports. And I don't think people talk enough about that. And to see us coming in and kicking the door, throwing bows to get in, you know what I'm saying? And, y'all busting the door open to make sure the rest of us getting in is inspiring. So to see Shanae show up and put this together, and people understand, like you said, Erica, there's nuance behind all this. And so when you see somebody who's able to put this together, I'm excited. I know it's only the beginning. We already know that there are more projects coming. I'm hoping, I know that there are more projects coming, because, people are telling me about the type of projects coming down the pipeline. So I'm excited to see. I keep telling my white colleagues, listen, I said, your allyship is no good if y'all are not bringing us up with you and making sure that we're a part of these projects and, having equity in this. And this goes back to even the Nike thing. These women want equity at this point. If they can't have that, they're on to the next, boo.
That's the word that we need to focus on: equity, not equality. Because the levels is still going to change with equality. But if we work on ourselves, then, equal out.
Hey, let's go. I'm here for all of that. And that's why I love our mini tribe. And we got to give a shout out to Princess and Lo, not with us on the screen, but definitely a part of the mini tribe. So many amazing people a part of the WNBA, making big moves, making big strides in this 25th season. And the league is starting to make some strides too. And I think the reason that we're seeing that is because the WNBA itself, so that starts with the front office, now led by Kathy Engelbert, is starting to take ownership of itself. Yes, we know that the WNBA is linked to the NBA. But we also know that the WNBA has leadership and leaders on the court and off the court. And now it's time to maximize the leadership. And I think we're starting to see that. But we're going to let folks get ready. We've got watch parties on Clubhouse for the 144. We're going to be locked in on ESPN, of course, to watch. But this live stream for Locked On Women's Basketball, before we close out with the mini tribe, we want to go around the horn and make sure folks know where to find you. And if there's anything that y'all have coming through for the 25th season. So let's start with Brown, you, and then we'll go to Ari and close out with Baker.
Yes. So you can find me on... Dang, what's my name? Jasmine D _Brown on Twitter.
Sean, you got her. You got her.
You can also follow me on Instagram at jdaniellebrown.
All right. Of course, part of the team at HighlightHER. Ari, what about you?
I like to keep it cute and universal. I'm Ari Ivory on every social network, including Facebook and LinkedIn. But tune in every week, Thursday. HighlightHER has a segment on WNBA Weekly hosted by Renee Montgomery. So we're going to do our Don't Sleep players. So it's all the underdog players, the storylines that people overlook that I'll be talking about each week on Thursday on NBA TV.
Yes, let's go. All right, Baker, you up?
Yo, man, I got to catch up. By the way, I'm disappointed my nephew did not make an appearance tonight.
He is bad. He's a terrible player.
That's fair.
He's not going to be seen.
Oh, okay. See, you starting drama.
Right. Y'all can find me everywhere at We Got Game 2. And hey, y'all never know what's going to come down the pipeline with me. So stay tuned.
Okay, Gift Box, New York Liberty.
I'm just trying to get the shorts for real.
On the crown. I see you. I see you. And of course, I am your Tuesday, Thursday host of Locked On Women's Basketball, Erica Lindsay Ayala. Much love to Sean, the man behind the curtain who has been producing this. And of course, to the entire Locked On network that has given us 2 hours here to talk WNBA. And we ended it here with the mini tribe doing amazing things. But now it's time for y'all to go get your snacks. Get your dinner. I don't know where you from, but make sure you get some food, some drink, and then go watch the 144. And I will definitely have a recap coming up on Locked On Women's Basketball.
Collard greens and Crown Royal. Shout out to Crown Royal.
See, y'all got the hookup. Y'all, I'm a be on my margarita. I'm gonna be on my margarita mix. I should have ordered some Cinnabons. Dang, I wasn't thinking.
That would have been real cute.
Look, JB Sweets is opening back up in about 2 months ago. Jazz is tired.
Jazz is tired. All right, everyone, take care, and we will catch you. There's a lot of watch parties. I know Christina has one on Clubhouse. There's a bunch of them, but let's just make sure always that we're supporting everyone that's supporting the WNBA. All right, y'all be good. Auntie out.